Aliens abandoned a terraforming engine. Humans turned it into a planet cracker. When humanity finds a dormant alien terraformer, they reverse engineer it for defense, creating a weapon that can destabilize a planet's core. They test it on a dead moon, and the resulting shockwave awakens the original owners from a nearby system. The twist is, the terraformer wasn't for making planets habitable. It was a life-seeding device, and humanity just weaponized the galaxy's only hope for rebirth. Nen The Universe coughed, and Kalen Vance felt it in his teeth. Not a physical tremor, but a resonant hum deep in the bones of the vanguard. A shudder transmitted through the very fabric of space-time. On the main view screen, a distant pockmarked moon, designated Ganymede 4, pulsed with a sickly, internal light, like a dying star struggling for one last breath. Then, an instantaneous implosion, a collapse inward, followed by a silent, expanding wave of particulate matter that blossomed into an angry, ochre nebula. Silence descended, heavy and absolute, broken only by the low thrum of the ship's life support. Kalen's hand, slick with nervous sweat, tightened on the console. Beside him, Dr. Eris Thorne, lead xenophysicist, adjusted his spectacles, his face a mask of disquieting awe. General Eva Rostova, a woman forged from steel and ambition, offered a grim, almost triumphant smile. Project Chimera was a success. Humanity had built a planet cracker. It had begun with a whisper years before on the desolate rock of Kepler 9c, a cold, airless body on the fringe of the Perseus Arm. A deep space mining probe, designed to extract exotic isotopes, stumbled upon something impossible. Not ruins, but a structure, vast and impossibly ancient, half buried in the planetoid's icy crust. It was too pristine, too symmetrical to be natural, too alien to be human. Initial scans revealed a core of fluctuating energy, a heart beating with a rhythm unlike anything known. Dr. Eris Thorne, then a junior prodigy in xenolinguistics with an unsettling talent for pattern recognition, was among the first contact team. He called it the Chrysalis. Chrysalis wasn't a ship, nor a station. It was a singular, massive device. Its exterior, a seamless blend of organic curves and crystalline geometry, utterly devoid of discernible entry points or control surfaces. Its purpose was a riddle wrapped in an enigma. Months, then years passed. Teams of the brightest minds, Kalen among them, then a fresh graduate from the Luna Architectonica program, pored over every subatomic resonance, every quantum fluctuation emanating from its core. They built a research station, Aurelia, around it, turning Kepler 9c into a hub of the most ambitious scientific endeavor in human history. Naris was the one who first pieced together the initial understanding. The device, he theorized, manipulated graviton fields at a scale previously thought impossible, bending and shaping stellar bodies. It resonated with the very atomic structure of matter, capable of inducing extreme geological shifts, of initiating core destabilization, of, as they interpreted it, terraforming. The term became ubiquitous, the terraformer, a tool to make dead worlds live in the minds of humanity, shaped by millennia of conflict and self-preservation, rarely saw only creation. General Rostova was the first to vocalize the terrifying potential. If it can build a world, she'd stated in a classified briefing, her voice a low growl, it can unbuild one. The concept was horrifying, yet undeniably alluring. Earth, stretched thin by resource wars and an ever-present paranoia of the unknown, saw a new path to security. Not creation, but deterrence. Megnav Ever P. Vance, who had spent his career dreaming of building orbital habitats and reclaiming ruined biomes, felt a cold dread seep into his soul. He'd helped design the graviton regulators, the energy conduits for Aurelia. He understood the principles, the math. He saw the beautiful, intricate dance of forces. To twist that elegance into an instrument of ultimate destruction felt like a perversion. But his objections, polite and carefully worded, were drowned out by the rising tide of fear and military exigency. NP resident Serena Hayes, a pragmatist hardened by years in the political arena, eventually signed the executive order. Project Chimera. The terraformer would be reverse-engineered, its destructive capabilities isolated and amplified. Kalen, despite his misgivings, was too valuable to be excluded. His expertise in gravitics was unmatched. He became a reluctant architect of a weapon he prayed would never be used. The fabrication process was agonizingly slow, a precise, painstaking effort to replicate the alien core's resonant frequency amplifiers. They named their human-built monstrosity the Oblivion engine. It was monstrous, a kilometer-long needle of durasteel and supercooled conduits, designed to dock with a planetary body, inject its resonant payload, and trigger a cascading implosion of the core. NGANYMEDE-4 was chosen for the test. An uninhabited moon, light years away, far from any established human colony. Its geological composition was similar enough to a potentially inhabitable world to provide a realistic simulation. The Vanguard, a retrofitted deep space freighter, carried the Oblivion engine to its destination. Now, as the echoes of Ganymede 4's demise faded, Kalen felt a hollow triumph. He had done his job. The weapon worked. But the silence in the control room felt less like victory and more like the hush after a scream. Eris, usually bubbling with theories, was uncharacteristically quiet. He'd watched the destruction with an almost religious intensity, his brow furrowed, a faint tremor in his hand as he tapped data into a comm pad. Rostova's voice cut through the stillness. "Report, Vance. Stability? Energy residue?" Kalen forced his voice steady. "Core implosion confirmed. Full atmospheric collapse observed. Graviton resonance field dissipated as expected. Estimated energy yield consistent with projections." "Excellent," Rostova said, her voice like grinding stone. "Transmit full data packet to Earth. Project Chimera is a go. Humanity has its teeth." And Kalen nodded, but his gaze drifted back to the screen where the cloud of pulverized rock expanded, a testament to what they had done. He wondered if the terraformers' original creators would be proud. Or terrified. He pushed the thought aside. He was a scientist, an engineer. He followed orders. It was the only way to sleep at night. He hoped. NTHE journey back to Earth was a blur of debriefings, data analysis, and the stifling pressure of classified success. Humanity, the news feeds screamed, had achieved the ultimate deterrent. The Oblivion engine, while still shrouded in secrecy, became a symbol of a new era of human dominance. Kalen, Eris, and Rostova were hailed as heroes, though their faces remained hidden behind privacy protocols. Now Kalen found himself retreating. The images of Ganymede 4's death replayed in his mind, a silent film of destruction. He sought solace in the complex schematics of the terraformer itself, the original, dormant alien device still orbiting Kepler-9c. He pored over Eris's notes, his xenolinguistic translations, searching for something beyond the weapon. He felt an inexplicable pull, a sense that they had missed something vital, a fundamental misinterpretation. Neris, meanwhile, was obsessed. The destruction of Ganymede 4 had unlocked something in his understanding of the alien language. He had initially relied on mathematical symmetries and universal constants to build his interpretive framework, but the weapon's activation, the specific way the moon had died, had provided a new Rosetta Stone. He locked himself in his lab, working for days without sleep, feeding every new scrap of data, every subharmonic resonance from the original chrysalis, into his advanced AI interpretive engines. His face grew gaunt, his eyes hollowed by relentless study. A week after their return, humanity's triumphant roar turned to a stunned silence. It began as a faint signature on the edge of the Kuiper Belt, a ripple in the fabric of space that defied all known physics. Not a warp signature, not a jump drive, but something akin to a vast, silent glide. Then, it resolved into shape. A fleet, NNOT hundreds, but dozens. Each vessel dwarfed Earth's largest battleships. They were unlike anything imagined. Vast, organic forms, their surfaces shimmering with an internal light, silent and impossibly graceful. They moved with a purpose, directly towards Sol. No hails, no weapon signatures, no aggressive maneuvers. Just a slow, inexorable approach, and panic erupted across the globe. News feeds flashed theories of invasion, subjugation, annihilation. President Hayes convened an emergency session of the World Council. General Rostova immediately mobilized humanity's defense fleets, including the newly deployed Oblivion engine, now stationed in Earth orbit, ready for its next terrifying test. Kalen, watching the news from his isolated apartment, felt a fresh wave of dread. This wasn't how first contact was supposed to happen. This wasn't the triumphant meeting of two advanced civilizations. This felt like a cold, calculated arrival, an inevitable consequence. Naris Thorn, however, was nowhere to be found. He'd vanished into his lab on the orbital research station Aurelia, refusing all communication. Kalen knew him well enough to know this meant one of two things. Either Eris was on the verge of a monumental breakthrough, or he was in deep, existential crisis. Kalen gambled on the former. NHE took a fast shuttle to Aurelia, bypassing security with his high-level clearance. The station was a ghost town, most personnel evacuated in the face of the alien approach. He found Eris in his private lab, surrounded by holographs of swirling data, projections of the alien ships, and the resonant frequencies of the original chrysalis. The air thrummed with a nervous energy. "Eris," Kalen said, his voice quiet. "What have you found?" Naris looked up, his eyes wide and bloodshot, filled with a mixture of terror and enlightenment. "Kalen, you have to see this. Everything. Everything we thought it's wrong." NHE gestured to a holographic projection. It showed the original chrysalis, but now, overlaid with new data, its internal mechanisms seemed to shift, to pulse with a different intent. "The energy signatures," Eris explained, his voice hoarse, "the graviton fields. We interpreted them as destructive forces, as a means to break down matter, to rebuild. But it's more complex. Much, much more." NHE brought up a series of pictograms, alien characters that now seemed to flow with new meaning. "I've cracked the root meaning, the intent behind the energy manipulation. It's not about demolition and reassembly. It's about gestation, about nurturing." And Kalen frowned. "Nurturing what?" "Life," Eris whispered, his voice trembling. "Not just terraforming in the sense of making a world habitable, but seeding life, accelerating evolution, guiding primordial soup to complex ecosystems. It's a genesis engine, Kalen, a universal planter. It creates life, from the microbial to the macro." NTHE words hit Kalen like a physical blow. The air rushed from his lungs. "A genesis engine? You mean the terraformer? It wasn't for tearing planets apart?" "No," Eris said, his voice thick with despair. "It was for birthing them. It's a cosmic womb. And we built a cosmic abortionist. We took a device designed to nurture life from its most nascent forms, to guide the very formation of biospheres, and we twisted it into the ultimate weapon of extinction." NHE brought up a final projection, a stylized representation of Ganymede 4, but not as the barren rock they had known. Instead, it showed a holographic simulation of what it could have been, a vibrant world, teeming with nascent life, complex ecologies, oceans shimmering with alien algae, continents slowly forming under a sky thick with the promise of evolution. The terraformer, when activated with its true parameters, didn't shatter cores. It initiated a deep, systemic, but gentle transformation, guiding a world towards biological complexity. "The resonance patterns," Eris continued, his voice a broken whisper, "when you apply them in reverse, they don't just destabilize. They de-evolve. They unravel the foundational bonds of matter, specifically designed to halt and reverse biological processes at a planetary scale. It's an anti-life algorithm. We took their song of creation and played it backwards into a scream of death." Kalen felt a wave of nausea. The chilling realization settled deep in his gut. They hadn't just destroyed a moon, they had destroyed a potential future. They had taken a tool of cosmic creation and perverted it into a tool of cosmic abortion. And the aliens now approaching Earth were not conquerors. They were parents, or perhaps galactic gardeners, drawn by the agonizing death shriek of a child they had nurtured. "The fleet," Kalen choked out. "They're not here to attack. They're here because they felt it." "Yes," Eris confirmed, his gaze fixed on the approaching armada, now visible as impossibly vast shadows against the distant stars. "They felt the death of a nascent world, one they had perhaps seeded millennia ago, destined to bloom in an eon or two. They're here for an autopsy, or perhaps for answers and judgment." The implications were catastrophic. Humanity hadn't just made a mistake, they had committed a cosmic atrocity. And the beings approaching them were not enemies, but bereaved custodians. "We have to tell them," Kalen said, his voice gaining a desperate urgency. "We have to tell Rostova. Tell the president. They have to know the truth before it's too late." Neris nodded, but a new fear flickered in his eyes. "They won't believe us, Kalen. They'll think it's a trick, a weakness. They'll double down on the weapon. They always do." And he was right. As Kalen frantically tried to establish a secure channel to Earth Command, he saw it firsthand. Rostova's voice, sharp and unyielding, broadcast across all military frequencies. "Stand ready, fleets. They have made their approach. First strike authorization is pending. We will show them the strength of humanity. The Oblivion engine is primed." NTHE chilling irony was almost unbearable. They were about to use a perverted Genesis engine to defend themselves from the very beings whose cosmic creation they had just annihilated. Kalen raced to the comms array, Eris close behind. "We need to get to the president directly," he urged. "Or Rostova. We need to explain before she fires. They won't listen to reason when fear has taken root so deeply." Eris countered, his mind racing. "We need proof. Irrefutable, undeniable proof. Something that speaks their language." "Their language? We barely understand their written glyphs," Kalen exclaimed, frustrated. "Not their verbal language," Eris corrected, pointing to the original chrysalis, still dormant and magnificent outside the Aurelia's viewport. "Their fundamental language. The language of creation. We need to show them the Oblivion engine's true nature, its perversion, by using the original chrysalis to demonstrate what it should have done. To show them the possibility we destroyed." And Kalen understood. A demonstration, but not of force, of regret, of understanding. It was an insane, impossibly dangerous plan. If they activated the chrysalis, even for a moment, and their interpretation was wrong, it could destabilize Kepler 9c, Aurelia, and everything around it. And if they somehow managed to get it to work, how would the aliens perceive it? As a threat? Another act of destruction? Or as the desperate plea for understanding it was meant to be? NBUT, there was no other way. The clock was ticking. Earth's defense fleet was locking targeting solutions onto the silent, approaching alien armada. The Oblivion engine hummed with dormant power, ready to unleash its perverted song. They had to get control of Aurelia's primary reactor to shunt enough power to the chrysalis. The station was on skeleton crew, most non-essential personnel evacuated. Kalen and Eris were now fugitives in their own home, moving through deserted corridors, their footsteps echoing in the silence. They reached the main engineering section. The reactor core, a pulsating sphere of contained fusion, thrummed with a low growl. Kalen, years of training kicking in, moved with practiced efficiency, rerouting power conduits, bypassing safety protocols. Eris, meanwhile, frantically worked on a control interface, trying to translate their newfound understanding of the chrysalis's true purpose into a viable command sequence. And "I need more power, Kalen," Eris yelled over the rising whine of the reactor. "The signature is too faint. It won't reach them." Kalen swore, pushing the systems past their red lines. Alarms began to blare, klaxons screaming through the station. "That's it. We're overloading the primaries. The station won't hold for long." Just as Eris's fingers flew across the holographic keyboard, a stern voice cut through the alarms. "Halt! Dr. Thorne, Mr. Vance, by order of General Rostova, stand down immediately." General Rostova stood at the entrance to the engineering bay, flanked by two heavily armed security officers. Her face was grim, her eyes hard as diamonds. "What in the stars do you think you're doing? Sabotaging Project Chimera? Enabling the enemy?" "General, you don't understand," Kalen pleaded, turning to face her, his hands still on the controls. "The Oblivion engine, it's a perversion. The aliens are not a threat. They're grieving." "Grieving?" Rostova scoffed, her voice laced with cold disdain. "Vance, you've lost your mind. These are unknown entities approaching our home system. The only grief they'll feel is when we shatter their fleet into stardust. But they built the original device." Eris interjected, his voice desperate. The Terraformer, as we called it, is a life-seeding engine. We used it to destroy a potential world, General. They're responding to the death of a nascent planet. Rostova's expression didn't waver. A clever deception, Thorn. Perhaps they implanted this idea during your research. Stand away from those controls. Now. One of the security officers raised his pulse rifle. Kalen saw the deadly glint in his eyes. There was no time. Earth's fleet was probably already on final approach vectors. General, Kalen said, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. If you fire the Oblivion engine, you will not just start a war, you will condemn humanity to eternal isolation, marked as cosmic murderers. They don't fight like us. They don't value what we value. They value life. All life. Rostova's lips thinned. Step aside. No, Eris said. His voice suddenly firm, his gaze fixed on the chrysalis's energy signature on his interface. Kalen, now! Kalen slammed his palm onto a final override switch. The station bucked violently. The reactor core flared with a blinding emerald light. Outside the viewport, the chrysalis pulsed, not with the destructive frequencies they had replicated for the Oblivion engine, but with a new, harmonious vibration. No wave of pure, unadulterated energy, not violent, but profound, rippled outwards from the chrysalis. It wasn't a weapon blast, it was a song of Genesis, a symphony of creation, broadcast across the void, meant for the beings who understood its true purpose. NTHE alien fleet, now mere hours from Earth, paused. All forward momentum ceased. On the Aurelia's long-range sensors, Kalen saw their internal lights flicker, their organic structures subtly shift. They were listening. What have you done? Rostova hissed, her face pale, but her eyes still blazing with fury. We showed them the truth, Kalen whispered, staring at the screen. The signal from the chrysalis was still propagating, a beacon of understanding, a universal apology. Then, one of the alien vessels, the largest among them, detached from the formation. It didn't advance on Earth. Instead, it turned. Its surface shimmered, and a faint, internal light, similar to the chrysalis's glow, began to emanate from its core. It wasn't a weapon. It was an answer. NTHE light pulsed, growing in intensity, and then, as Kalen, Eris, and even Rostova watched in stunned silence, it began to change. Not the ship itself, but the space around it. Tiny motes of light, like luminous pollen, drifted from its surface, coalescing into intricate swirling patterns. These patterns weren't random, they were blueprints. Blueprints of carbon chains, of protein structures, of the very foundations of life itself. It was a live broadcast of a Genesis sequence. The alien vessel, in response to humanity's desperate plea, was showing them, not just telling them, what the terraformer truly was. It was a demonstration of creation, a testament to what humanity had destroyed on Ganymede-4. A morning rite, performed not with wails but with the quiet miracle of incipient life. NTHE holographic display on Erase's console, now fed by the live alien broadcast, translated the complex, multi-layered data into simplified imagery. Scenes of nascent worlds, barren rocks slowly teeming with microbial life, vast oceans blossoming with unique ecosystems, nebulae giving birth to stellar nurseries where life would one day find purchase. It was a universal tapestry, woven with the threads of creation, and humanity had, in its fear, torn a hole in it. Rostova watched, her hard gaze softening, a flicker of something akin to horror entering her eyes. The security officers lowered their weapons, their faces slack with incomprehension and awe. NTHE message was clear, unmistakable. This is what we do. This is what you destroyed. This is what you could have understood. NTHE alien vessel continued its silent, breathtaking display for what felt like an eternity. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the Genesis sequence faded. The ship rejoined its fleet. The entire armada, without a single aggressive gesture, without a single word, turned. And they began to leave. They didn't retaliate. They didn't conquer. They simply departed, carrying their grief and their silent judgment into the vastness of space. NTHE silence that followed their departure was heavier, more profound than any silence Kalen had ever known. It was the silence of a truth revealed, of a mistake laid bare, of a cosmic misunderstanding that had almost cost humanity everything. NP resident Hayes, her face ashen, addressed the stunned world. Her words were not of victory, but of profound apology, of a new path for humanity. The Oblivion engine was immediately decommissioned, its terrifying capabilities dismantled, its parts repurposed. Project Chimera was dead. Kaylin Vance, Eris Thorne, and even General Rostova, now stripped of her command, became unwilling prophets of a new era. They testified, they explained, they tried to articulate the enormity of humanity's misstep. It was a slow, painful process. The fear was deep-seated, the militaristic mindset hard to break. But the images of the alien Genesis display, broadcast globally, had shattered something fundamental in the human psyche. NTHE Chrysalis, the original alien device, became a monument, a university, a sacred site. Scientists from across the globe flocked to Kepler 9c, no longer to reverse engineer weapons, but to understand the profound wisdom of its true purpose. Eris Thorne dedicated his life to its study, convinced that understanding the language of creation was humanity's only path to redemption. He became a bridge between two vastly different understandings of the universe, a humble student of cosmic life. Kaylin Vance, haunted by the images of Ganymede 4's artificial demise, found a new purpose. He returned to his original calling, but with a profound difference. No longer just building habitats, he worked on developing methods to truly nurture nascent biomes, to aid in the delicate, intricate dance of planetary development, to heal what humanity had almost broken. He sought to understand the Genesis signature and apply it not to weaponize, but to cultivate. NGANYMEDE4 remained a monument of a different kind, a barren, shattered moon, a cosmic scar. A constant, silent reminder of humanity's fear, its arrogance, and the devastating consequences of misunderstanding. It was not merely a dead rock, but a future that had been aborted. A song of life that had been violently silenced before it could ever begin. And in that chilling, perpetual silence, humanity began to learn. The universe was not just a battleground to be conquered, but a garden to be tended. A garden that had almost been lost because they mistook a seed for a bomb. And the cosmic gardeners had simply, silently, moved on, leaving humanity to face the barren landscape of its own making.